And
We'll go live.
yeah, and you'll kill it on your side, right? Okay, let's go live.
Okay. Hold on. Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear us? Please say in the chat if you can hear us.
It would be an absolute blessing, beyond a blessing, if you could hear us.
Please. Somebody say that you can fucking hear us. Oh good, pee pee poo poo. Okay. Are people finally, is this working?
This took us so long. We are embarrassed to admit, and it was not our fault in any way. It was all working. We were sitting here chatting, chilling, waiting for the stream to start, and then 20 minutes before the stream was supposed to start, everything stopped working. It didn't want to stream, and now we kind of managed how to make it start. Go on, Hakim, if you want to also say, but sorry from my side, I'm sure from Hakim's side, but it was genuinely outside of our control.
Yes, all right, hold on, let me just make a Twitter post that's finally live. But yeah, what happened was my sincerest apologies for this garbage not fucking working. The issue, for whatever reason, we have no idea why it wouldn't work. We started 2 hours before the, what's it called? 2 hours before the stream, we came on and we're like, you know what, let's set it up. Let's, make some nice graphics for people. We had the audio waves and everything. Everything was working perfectly. The second it gets time to actually start, this garbage happens. So yeah, we're very sorry. Let me just make the announcement because I think lots of people left.
Yeah, I mean, I would have left. I completely understand them. But thank you to all of you who stayed. Yes. Your iron will has been tested and has been proven as legitimate.
Yes. Fuck, I need the stupid stream link now.
Yes, I'm going to do the same. Finally live over on Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, YouTube heard that a Balkan commie and Iraqi commie are about to do a stream together and intentionally sabotage that. 1984 is literally happening before our eyes, ladies and gentlemen.
It's the Stalinist internet. I don't know what to tell you guys. All right, let me make this fucking post, and then finally we can get this out. The stream.
We have successfully defeated all opposers of great international solidarity. Yes, I know I sound like a LARPer, but I am joking around, obviously.
No, you think it's not even a fucking joke. At some point, I was actually considering there's sabotage at play. No way that this is, yeah. Anyways, alhamdulillah, it's finally working. I think what's it called? A Twitter post is enough. I'm not going to post anything on YouTube. Yes. All right. Say somebody, inconspicuous Minnesotan said, I mowed my mom's lawn waiting for you guys to go live, and he donated $5. Thank you for the $5. Very much appreciated. Ill State Fishing said, let's go, and I think he sent something else that I didn't see. Let's go again. Yes. Thank you very much. We're finally live.
Okay, right. Now we can relax. We actually made it work. Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Okay. Alhamdulillah. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to our very delayed stream. I am joined by the ever fantastic Yugopnik. He is the best and only love of my life, aside from all the other ones. But also a great creator. If you're not familiar with his work, I've made a specific, even a mutual aid video thing where I gave shout-outs to him. I love all his videos. I've watched everything that he's made. I highly recommend you go check him out, check out his Twitter because he's hilarious, and check out his videos, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. So after that and the introduction, we can just, I guess, start the supposedly chill stream if it does happen.
Absolutely. Hopefully the servers shall not drop us. And yes. This is going to be a great morning, evening, afternoon, late evening for some of you from the other side of the world. And yeah, we can start with, I don't know, relatively recent things that have been happening all over the world. And then we can move into things that have been happening in the online shit posting sphere of what we like to call the left. Wherever you want to take this, brother, go ahead.
For sure. First thing I would just like to say is Alisto, he donated 20 Moroccan dirhams. He said everything's all right, Habibi. So I'm glad some people are and I saw a lot in the chat, by the way. You guys are very funny. I was reading it. Me and Yugopnik were reading the chat as it was passing along, and it calmed us down from the intense anxiety of trying to get this fucking shit to work. So yeah, anyways, yeah, with what's been happening. Well, a couple of things have happened. The thing in Afghanistan has happened. The Twitter sphere of stuff I would not be aware of because I have not been online for quite a bit of time. If people aren't aware, I'm currently in the middle of a move. And as a result, I've just kind of not been present at all. You probably even noticed, I think this is the longest I've gone without uploading video in years. So yeah, but the new videos coming up soon. But yeah, so first topic of discussion, let's keep it light. How about whatever Twitter shitposting's been happening? I think Yugopnik, you're more in tune with this.
Oh, I'm about to poison your mind. So the recent thing that the online left has been losing its shit around is arguably the highest grossing internet leftist, or whatever you want to call it, Hassan Abi. A sexy Turkish motherfucker, made a lot of money through his Twitch efforts, and to such an extent that he stopped renting and chose to purchase a rather, I mean, it's not extremely large, but because it's in LA, it was a $2+ million house. So immediately, liberals from all over the online sphere, which have always had a problem with the said gentleman, started shitting on him with the typical anti-socialist rhetoric that anyone who is relatively wealthy and still considers himself a left-wing individual, that they are an absolute hypocrite, which comes as a contrast to, obviously, when you are poor and you're a leftist, then you are a shill who wants to take other people's money, and you're only a leftist because you yourself do not have money. And this contrast between these two opinions, where the truth, I feel, is much more gray and should be explored more through a material analysis and not just oh, rich man bad, comes as something that neither of these sides talk about. But yeah, this is basically kind of the overview of the situation, and a lot of leftists came to not support, but to say, okay, this is bullshit criticism. Others were like, okay, you cannot support the working class while you are wealthy, etc., etc. And I guess we can go from there. My standpoint is very simple. I've always talked about it. Socialism does not mean poverty. If you have the ability to make your life better or more financially stable inside of capitalism, but as long as you do not betray your class, that is something absolutely acceptable to do. You obviously should not become an exploiter, meaning a landlord, a big business owner, or anything that pushes you away from the material conditions which you have existed in up until that moment. But I also understand the absolutely eloquent and on point argument that once a person changes, for example, their social class, becoming richer, etc., being surrounded by richer people, even if they are not a landlord or a business owner, etc., their motivation to stay a socialist might start going away. And we've seen that a lot with both creators. I've seen that with people in my own life. We've seen that all over the place, where people become wealthier and they completely give up on the socialist dream because literally there's not enough material reasons for them to remain as such. I honestly, in this specific case, do not see it happening with Hassan at all. He has always been a kind of a point of entry for leftists in general online. Do I disagree probably with him on like 95% of things? Not 95, but probably 50%. He's much more, social democratic, etc., which are all fair criticism to have towards him. But the idea that because he has started earning more and more on Twitch specifically, that somehow makes him less of a Marxist, in my modest opinion, is a ill-placed argument, and it's missing the bigger picture that the actual class enemies that we need to indirectly defeat are not like your local fucking DJ that makes 300,000 a year because he's a wealthy good DJ, but people whose wealth is so absolutely immensely massive that compared to local petit bourgeois, it's absolutely anything. So yes, misdirected anger. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree mostly with your side of the argument. Just before actually I give my perspectives on this, the audio levels between you and I are okay, right? To the people in the chat, we both sound all right, I hope. Let's just see what people say. I mean, arguments going on is fine.
Yeah, it seems to be fine. I lowered. Perfect. Some people were saying mine was a bit higher, but I lowered it. Yeah.
All right, now it's perfect. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. But yeah, yes. Generally, my perspective on it is like this. Not to it's a oft repeated phrase. It's almost a platitude at this point. But there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. If somebody chooses to buy a home through some income that they've earned. In more, I guess, quote unquote, rightful ways than others. I mean, we get into the philosophy of what you consider a Twitch to be, and if it's a quote unquote real job, if you feel that the compensation that they get is proportional to the amount of effort they put in, all that kind of stuff. There can be a conversation around that. But my point kind of relies a lot on what you said, that we shouldn't have this culture of the left eating its own. Yes, it's a bit like sketchy that he bought such an expensive home, but if he had the wealth too, he can kind of do what he wants with it. That's more of a personal argument. My personal perspective is this: you should not compromise your political beliefs, and you shouldn't have once you as a member of the proletarian class, you shouldn't switch allegiances solely by increased income, because your class and your class nature is defined by relations to the means of production. So what ends up happening a lot is people who end up getting more money end up with a petty bourgeois ideology that kind of
mentality.
Yeah, exactly. You see this a lot with professionals, like middle level professionals. I'm talking about doctors, engineers, lawyers, people who have avenues to start small scale private business that is nonetheless lucrative. Where they get a petty bourgeois mindset, despite the fact that through whatever they're doing, it's a practical impossibility for them to become a member of the capitalist class. Same thing with Hassan. But at the end of the day, honestly, I don't see what the controversy really is. Like, maybe some people think like, oh, he could have used all that money to support local organizations and motivation towards organization, all that kind of stuff. But also, on the other hand, look, this is where it gets complicated, because we need to think about everybody has their different conditions, right? And we're materialists at the end of the day. And we need to realize that some people, for example, in his particular, because I don't watch him. I've never seen a stream of his. I don't know. I only know what he looks like, and I think he was on the Young Turks before. Other than that, I know very little of him. But from what I see, he seems to be a very media person. I don't know if he does I don't know if he has if he does interviews on his show. I don't know what he does, but the very fact that he's in LA means that he probably stayed in LA for the business relation side of things. Because if you want to just stream, you can go and live in Wyoming somewhere very cheaply and still do your job perfectly fine. But in Wyoming, the sort of connections that you can make aren't the same as within LA. So it makes sense why he stayed there. As for property prices, I think we need to realize that the price itself is more tied to the location. If that's that same home, I haven't seen pictures of. I didn't even know about this news until today. If that house was, like I said, in the aforementioned example in Wyoming, for example, then it would have been much larger or much cheaper for that relative amount of money that was paid. With all that being said, Yeah, I guess it's kind of like it makes you raise an eyebrow, but I don't think it's like, oh, he's not a Marxist anymore. You've recanted, like it's a heresy. I don't think we should think of it that way. But my sole conclusion on my one point is, who cares? Honestly, who cares? So what?
Same.
Yeah. Like, okay, he's one guy. There's so many other, and if he's done good for the movement proportionally, then why? Like, I guess it's okay. It's a very, very difficult field to navigate, and personally, I haven't given it enough thought. If I were in the same position, I wouldn't have done what he did. But then again, I'm not in the material conditions that he's in. I don't know about his business contracts or what he has, what he's obligated to fulfill, and what form that needs to take place in, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's. But my general point is, who cares? Generally,
I could not agree more. The thing when discussing lifestyles, whatever they may be, and linking them to what we define as more expensive or more modest living, and then linking that to the Marxist analysis of the world, can lead us to potential infighting amongst each other, because one guy or girl or etc. can afford something, well, you cannot, and therefore you start seeing them as more of the class enemy than they actually are. If we concentrate on this, we only, from my perspective, it only leads to more infighting inside of the working class between those living in abject poverty and those doing relatively okay, because usually, let's face it, they were a bit luckier to have certain things available to them than the others who are far poorer, never had the opportunity to receive or to interact with. So all I'm saying is that it's moving the perspective. Whenever we do this, it's moving the perspective of the wider goal and of genuine class solidarity away from the system itself over to your fellow neighbor who bought a new Mercedes the other week. And it's just to me, that is not what Marxism is about. We're not shitting on someone because they're wearing, I don't know, jewelry. We're not proposing the idea that everybody should live as if they're, I don't know, an ascetic monk from the Caucasus Mountains. But quite to the opposite, the idea is to raise everyone to a level in which they receive the actual fruits of their full labor.
Yeah. I think we can connect that to a point of individualism versus a collective. We have to remember that, yeah, he's one dude, right? I think what he did would be very bad optics, if you want to even use that word, but it would look very bad, and it would be intrinsically a bad thing to do if he was part of an organization, and let's say he is. I'll give an example. Imagine if within the Bolsheviks, right, prior to the revolution, there had been members of like the Central Committee who were also vastly wealthy, and as they agitate for for the revolution, they also own multi-million dollar properties, like the equivalent of it. There becomes a mismatch, right? And then it will directly affect the ability of the organization to carry out its work effectively. Basically, it ties into a point of hypocrisy. As an individual, it doesn't matter. As far as I know, he's not part of any organization. I don't even know if he's actually a Marxist. Some people in the chat mentioned that he calls himself a quote unquote democratic socialist. I don't know if that's him just trying to be more palatable, or if he generally is one of those more soft demi types who thinks, yeah, like more healthcare and no school debt, but nothing more than that. But my point being is that we need to consider that when it comes to personal consumption and the forms that it takes, it only really matters once it directly relates to the class struggle. So this is my point. If you are in a moment it's not a revolutionary moment, and everybody just living their life, and you decide to, I don't know, go and buy yourself a new video game console or some shit. I don't know, right? That doesn't reflect negatively on you as a Marxist or something. It doesn't negate your commie card isn't revoked or anything. But if you are in part of an organization and it is building towards a revolutionary moment, and instead of whatever spare funds that you may have, if they be of the organization or of your own, and instead of directly contributing to the organization and the end goal, you decide to solely consume with that, then it can become problematic. And even then, it depends on the circumstances revolving around it. I think putting a magnifying glass over a single person and what they've decided to do is it's a very liberal sort of thing to say. It's like when you see like celebrities and then they have they join a climate change demonstration, but they fly around in private jets. Yes, it's wrong, but then again, their effect is on such a minuscule scale that the character assassination that follows really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it won't change their habits of using like private jets or whatever the fuck. And the real culprits of heavy climate change are not affected in the least. For example, prime example being the American military. So yeah, I think centering more on appropriate critique, general social critique, rather than just highlighting a single individual and being like, oh, look what they did to, by whatever measure to themselves, improve their life. Point and you're a hypocrite, all that kind of stuff. Personally, there's a few super chats that went by. I don't even know if they're called super chats, but yeah, these things. One person, sorry, I missed your name, but they asked if we'd ever do something with infrared. I don't know who he is. I've never seen any work of his. I don't think he's ever contacted me, at least not to my knowledge. So I really can't comment on that. But if I see his stuff and I agree with his political stance or something, then I'm open to have a conversation with him. Why not? But yeah, and another person also, Dunkicino, asked what's our guys' position on Western Sahara, which is kind of derailing this conversation a bit, but I think that kind of brings it into something more interesting. The Western Sahara issue is basically, for those who are unfamiliar, Morocco technically is on the northwestern coast of Africa, and it extends down into the desert that borders Mauritania. And in the Western Sahara region, there's been a ongoing insurgency by something called the Polisario Front. It's been going on since the 70s, and they're basically an independence movement for the people, the ethnic group there that calls themselves Sahrawi people. And these people are Sahrawi literally means people of the desert. They're Arabs by all accounts, or at least they consider themselves Arab. They speak Arabic and everything. They're not Berber tribes for the most part. But the Moroccan government has refused independence to them because of economic opportunities that exist within that part of the Sahara. Usually it includes resource extraction. What our opinions of it are, I don't know about Yugopnik, but for me, I think that it's more of a frozen conflict. They don't have actual existing organizations. The last time the Polisario Front was really active was in the 80s. Right now, it's kind of a frozen conflict. As for who's in the right, well, it gets difficult. I don't believe in the Moroccan monarchy, but the Sahrawi people also don't have a legitimate political program for what would be their country. And also, it makes no sense to have just that area be a single country, because the vast majority of it is desert land. Even the coastal areas are not very lucrative for agriculture. It would not make sense for a nation. So that's kind of a long-winded answer for that. But yeah, if you have opinions on it, then feel free to share as well.
Well, I'm not particularly in-depth familiar with the specifics which are going on in that part of the world, between the inside of the Moroccan state and outside of it. But when it comes to self-determination in general as an idea, and when it comes to certain people's rights to sovereignty, it is an immensely complicated subject that I don't think can be covered in even this whole live stream, let alone as one separate question, for multiple reasons. But mine, and from the perspective of experiences on the Balkan Peninsula specifically, very often the concept of self-determination can be used by foreign and imperialist powers to put a paw, a foot, a boot in the local territory and use the specific individuals fighting for their sovereignty against the state which an imperialist power wants to destabilize and potentially completely destroy. I mean, some of the first and main arguments being thrown around in 1989 and 1990, both for the Soviet Union and for Yugoslavia specifically, were that these people deserve, no matter what, like the idea was, no matter what you think about socialism, but these people living in these, for example, with Yugoslavia and this federation, deserve self-determination, and they deserve to have their own separate state as an ethnic group. And this argument, amongst with a few others, were the main ones used to destroy a internationalist project itself. So often I would rather advise, I mean, who the fuck am I to advise whole groups of people? But I'm trying to say the path which people should be taking inside of states which they do not feel are properly representing their ethnic or cultural group is changing it from the inside and turning it into an internationalist project where all ethnicities, groups, religions, etc., are accepted on an absolutely equal level, instead of removing themselves completely and creating a state of its own, which very often in the beginning, unfortunately, even though that did not happen everywhere, there were great revolutionary movements which had massive class identity and class solidarity, like if we're looking at Ireland, etc., but often they by trying to separate themselves from a right-wing nationalist state, they end up just creating a smaller right-wing nationalist state in which their ethnicity is seen as above other minorities, which then start existing there. Usually a lot of minorities that come from the ex-majority that oppressed them, so we have a repeat of exploitation and sometimes very, very bloody murder and genocide.
Yeah. You know, something interesting. My next video is going to touch on Yugoslavia a bit, but it's more of a it's a lighter video, but it does briefly touch on something that both relates to your answer and something else somebody in the chat asked. Yugoslav Minecraft Steve, and he asked, since we're derailing anyway, how do you see communism spreading once again in post-Soviet bloc and post-Yugoslavic countries? And I think maybe I can mention Soviet, you can mention Yugoslav. But in my personal perspective, the idea of socialism spreading again, there is no magic formula. It's always the same thing. You need to educate, agitate, organize. It's very boring. That's the answer. That's tiring, and that's not what we want to hear. We want to hear something more exciting. But sadly, the only way that we're ever going to reach any efficacy in political programs that can take the reins of power is through organization building. This organization building needs to directly meet the needs of local communities that then grow up or build up into entire sections of countries or entire countries, particularly of a specific class, the proletarian class. And then afterwards, once the moment is right, you can agitate for revolutionary action, be it depending on the moment, sometimes elections, sometimes non-electoral means, if you get what I mean. And I think Yugoslav, I don't know, for Yugopnik, do you agree? Wouldn't it be generally the same? Do you think there's anything special that needs to be added to that?
No, absolutely nothing. You said it very eloquently. Just specifically for ex-socialist states, because I felt maybe the question was directed for countries where socialism was attempted in one way or another. There's additional sort of things that need to be taken into account, which is that after different socialist governments fell, there was an immense amount of money and propaganda inserted into these states to introduce the new system which is coming. the neoliberal system as an absolute utopia, which is going to change absolutely everything and which is going to make everybody's lives so much better than what the oppressive evil commies have been doing.
Yeah.
So the steps that need to be taken in these specific countries, I feel, are even harsher than in other places of the world, because quite ironically, I believe socialism has been demonized there more than almost anywhere else, and anywhere else except the U.S., of course, with the Red Scare shit and so on. So yeah, the class consciousness is not only seen as backwards, but also as a return to what is now being told to people who do not want to listen to their parents or their grandparents as an absolute horror film that they do not want to experience again. So I completely agree with you. Just in ex-socialist countries, agitate becomes an even more important piece of the three.
Yeah. But I have a much more important question than this, actually, and it is this: Yugopnik, who do you think, or actually, which socialist leader do you think had the most drip?
No discussion. Absolutely no discussion.
I think I'm going to agree with you.
Tito.
Absolutely.
Dude looked fucking phenomenal. He knew how to dress for for different situations and occasions, and when he would meet different types of people. But even when he lived in a fucking cave for so many years fighting the Nazis, he still always managed to look like an absolute Giga Sigma Chad.
Do you know something? It's fucking Sigma. Habibi, do you know the thing I fucking love about it is the way he would do his fucking hair. When he got older, he started slicking it back, but before he'd do like this little curl, you know, like this heartbreaker shit. And the thing that I love, because like I mentioned, the next video I'm doing is on Yugoslavia, and I was looking up some footage of Tito, and so much the fucking variety of hats this dude had.
Yes.
My God, I don't actually. You know what? This is a recommendation to you, because you can probably search in the relevant languages and find all this stuff. Please make a Twitter thread of all the fucking hats this dude had, because not only does he have millions of them, but he pulls them off so fucking well.
I could not agree more, absolutely. And the different suits and the different belts, and then him doing the cigar absolutely everywhere, even lighting it up in the middle of the White House where smoking is forbidden. Like, Jesus, the testicular massivity of this motherfucker, dude. They drag on the floor. I'm sure there's still underwear that can be found that was designed specifically for him, and I'm pretty sure it's designed in pure titanium.
Yeah. Dude, do you know, my favorite part about that episode of him in the White House is the fact that the aide, the translator, came to him, and he was told to translate, "Oh, smoking is forbidden here." He was like, "Oh, for you."
Yeah.
Fucking Chad move. I love it. But yeah, so that's why, fuck. But I think a close second, you know what, actually, a close second I think might be Stalin, personally, I think.
You think so?
I mean, yeah, no, I'll tell you why. Because Stalin was simple, but everything that he wore looked like he had his four choices, basically, but he wore those things to the fucking grave. You know, he had like old reliable. Because okay, maybe it's because I see that sense of style in me, because I'm the same. I have my taste in very simple clothes, simple like mix of articles of clothing that I just mix in different occasions. But no, I cannot pull off the drip of Tito. I cannot show up in a fucking bright yellow suit. I can't do that.
Oh, I feel you completely. Mine is more in line maybe with Tito, even though I dress very plainly. More, you could even say uniform-like. I like to have like only one color everything, and it's usually white, beige, and black. Mostly black, like 85% of my clothes are black.
Yeah, same.
There we go. But I heard, I read somewhere that at one point, after Stalin came to power, they wanted to design different articles of clothing that the new head of state is supposed to wear. and apparently he was absolutely furious at the designers because the clothing that they had made for him was more like Tito-like, but he wasn't pissed because it was Tito-like. He that was not even mentioned. It was
too extravagant looking.
Too extravagant. And then I was like, okay, let's check out how extravagant this shit is. And it's literally they just put a few stars. They put like a rank thing, what you call it, the thing you put on the shoulder. Very very tiny details. The buttons were a bit fancier, like crystal looking, etc., etc. He lost his shit. Oh my god, no, I cannot look like this. I'm one of many. I am not, the ruler of all, etc., etc., and I should not look like it. I, for example, would completely disagree with Comrade Stalin on this because I think you should be able to dress whatever fucking way you want. I mean, the diamonds are less rare than fucking glass at this point. Why not just give diamonds to everybody? Fuck yeah, if you want to wear a diamond crown all over the fucking city in a socialist state, fucking do it, bro. But then again, from an optics perspective, I completely understand why he did it.
But just a tidbit, that episode happened after victory over fascism, and it was in 1945. In June, the designers came because they want for the not in June, it was in April, excuse me, to design the
what specific day? Jesus Christ, your brain power. How the fuck do you know that Stalin wanted to change his outfit in April of 1945? You sick fuck.
But no, the reason I remember it is because they brought three options, and he told them to go fuck themselves on all three options, and you could see pictures of them, and it's exactly like you say, they're kind of plain looking if you think about it. But so that's why it was for Victory Day. That's why. And then he ended up just showing in that fucking what's it called, that fucking thatchy, the material that he ended up using looks like something that'd be very fucking itchy. But
always the thing. It looks like it's made from hemp or whatever you call that shit that's left over from weed. Literally.
So that's I'm glad that we agree on this very crucial point, because honestly I think there would have been a break in the party, there would have been a split if we disagreed on on this fundamental point,
on the drip, on the socialist drip.
I think another person, this is such a stupid conversation, but it's just kind of fun to have.
I love it.
I think another person, in my opinion, who pulled everything off really well was Castro.
Yes, I mean, yes, please go on.
Yeah, because this is why. Because the early period, he would always wear just the standard fatigues, of the rebel army. Afterwards, though, when he started wearing the officer uniform, the one that looks like a suit but it's green, the fucking drip. And do you know the foreign minister of Cuba at the time? Fuck, I don't remember his name. But this dude, if you see him, it's basically the guy, all he would wear is he'd wear khaki pants. He'd wear a white button-up shirt, but the dude was a bit chunky. He would always have like the first 4 buttons unbuttoned with his fucking chest hair coming out. He would have like a big golden ring on his ring finger, fucking Tito glasses, and a fat Cuban cigar. And that's how he'd show up to like diplomatic meetings. Man, some people... I wonder is it just because I look at it, I'm like, I guess almost every communist you look at, they always had a really good sense of style. I guess I'm the only one that's been left out.
No, I mean, I haven't seen you dress, but I'm pretty sure you do it very well. But yeah, I mean, it comes with when you're a person with what we like to call class consciousness or whatever, but then when you take the next step of actually being a full-on acting revolutionary, at that moment, I don't know where your mental space is at, but you literally don't give a fuck to such an extent, and you understand that absolutely everything in this world can be changed, that you tell yourself, okay, why should I subscribe to any limitations on how the fuck I should dress? Let's actually dress how I always wanted to fucking dress, which in I guess Castro's and Tito's case was absolutely savage looking badass motherfuckers, and in Stalin's case a calm wise member of the people, but at the same time leader of the people. I also shared on screen, confirmed Castro is a Slav wearing Adidas tracksuits all over the place. That is absolutely no discussion. We accept him among our people.
The second you brought that shit up, I was like, I know he's gonna do some stupid fucking slap posting shit. But yeah, no, you know what? I'll give you that one. But yeah, oh my god, wait, somebody said something. Oh, there's a comment I saw. Yugopnik has emulator noob said Yugopnik has seen Hakim make it confirmed. Yes, that's true. But also,
dude, it's so fucking big, man. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I mean, I heard stories about that men with beautiful voices usually are beautiful down there, but god damn it, dude.
Happy, please. Okay, how I long to run my fingers through your chest hair. But but yeah, and somebody else said Angry Velociraptor said I can't be the only one who's low key in love with Hakim. Habib, I'm in love with you too. All right, it is mutual and reciprocated. But yeah, let's just get. I think this is a nice way of segueing. We'll take one serious question, then we can meme a bit. Take one serious question, we meme a bit. Does that sound okay?
Perfect, my friend.
All right. So Jorge G, he donated $5, so thank you very much. He said, at the end of the day, most socialists are Democrats. Socialists keep telling us to organize, but how can we organize when we have no money or time? And this is, I think, a very nice question to ask. Personally, what I think is this. Just a side note, the video I made, I made a video recently. It's called Revolution, a How-To Guide. Not really, it's not really a how-to guide. It's a very basic intro into, organizing, a basic intro into organizing, which I suggest you check out because I discuss it there. But generally, this is what the most important thing that you can do is, number one, is educate yourself because it's free and it's happens according to your own effort. So the amount of time you want to spend on it is completely up to you. The amount of effort you want to spend on it is completely up to you. But at the end of the day, you're not losing anything by gaining this knowledge. And secondly, afterwards is you can discuss with those, because revolutions aren't made by going and marching in streets. I think actually demonstrations are some of the weakest forms of direct action, because usually what happens is people go, they waste a lot of energy during the demonstration, then they go home and nothing comes of it. Right. I think where revolution happens is, it's kind of boring to say, but when you educate yourself and then you have conversations with your family, people around you at work, when you bring union talk, things like this, when you slowly try to disseminate ideas into the general cultural zeitgeist, we can say, that's the way that we can approach organization on this like small scale level, where you feel like you don't have money to contribute to it nor time. When it comes to funds and whatnot, fundraising is an aspect that has to be done. During the time of the Bolsheviks, Stalin robbed banks for them. I mean, there's things that used to be done back in the day. We can't really do that anymore. I mean, I don't know if on YouTube I can tell you that's okay to do or not, but see how creative you can be. But for the future, yeah, there will have to be other alternative forms of fundraising. And there are endless ideas, by the way, for this. And as for direct organization building, is you should try to contribute the time that you feel you can get away with contributing, right? Not everybody has to be a full-time professional revolutionary that's, like lives in halfway houses and safe spots, going between office building to office building, trying to agitate.
Yeah.
But that's a very long-winded kind of answer. Maybe you have something to contribute on my perspective.
No, that was very well put. I would just add one thing where you mentioned protests being arguably one of the, what did you call it exactly? One of the least effective. Yes, and I completely agree with it. Not that protests are bad, but yes, they are extremely. They have not proven themselves as effective forms, and I feel that the internet actually has not helped this a lot, unfortunately, because before, yes, sure, you go out on a protest and you feel exhausted afterwards, and that kind of demotivates you from agitating in other spots, etc., etc. But we've created sort of maybe a completely new, even less effective form of agitating, which is quite literally sitting down, turning on YouTube or the TV, and consuming massive amounts of content which identifies itself as leftist, and feeling, after having watched it, as if you have done something for your community, for your country, or for your class in general. And that indirectly, unfortunately, leads to all of these usually wonderful creators which have created content to radicalize people, but unfortunately, because people again are only watching the video and then not doing anything about it, have been indirectly, I'm sorry if I'm pushing it too much, but indirectly have been de-radicalized. And this does not only apply on YouTube, also like pamphlets or shorter versions of larger texts, which are maybe more complicated, etc., etc. Quite literally give you enough, I don't know if it's dopamine or serotonin, but literally give you enough satisfaction from having consumed medium X to actually feel like you need to do something at your workplace or on the streets or, in general.
Yeah, absolutely beautifully put. I love it when you get into your mode, man. It's a marvel to just sit here and listen. But just to shout out, because I saw in the chat, Paul is in the chat.
So Paul, my boy.
Yeah, he is. For people who are not aware, he is an absolutely amazing creator. He has a great series, intro series to Marxism that he's been working on, that he's hoping to develop into many episodes. I think he's on 10 episodes now, I believe. His channel name is Marxist Paul. Go check him out. Go subscribe. Absolutely excellent creator. Cannot recommend him enough.
Same here. Paul is absolutely phenomenal and brilliant.
But yeah, exactly right. But no, I completely agree with you. Very, very sharp analysis. But yeah, let's see. Since that's the serious bit out, what meme should we discuss?
I already fucked up by introducing the OG conversation point, which was not that fun. So I'll leave this I guess third edgy topic to you, my friend.
Oh yeah, which was?
Oh, the first one about the houses and should you buy expensive shit as a communist? Yeah.
That was the first one. The second, what was the third one?
The second one was the clothing, the drip, socialist drip.
Okay, and the third?
No, wait, now we gotta think of the third.
Okay. I thought you said you had something in mind. Okay, sorry, misunderstanding. But yeah, yes. All right. There's something that actually we can tie this a bit to the beginning. The first thing about the consumerism and all that kind of stuff. I personally think, actually, it's more of a serious point, but we can discuss it nonetheless. I remember you put out a tweet a long time ago, and I still agree with it. You mentioned something along the effects of, like us, Marxists on YouTube, who just make, videos. We're not some fucking thought leaders. We're not, making a movement, nothing like that. At best, we are the modern version of agitprop posters of the 20s and 30s and whatnot. The work that we do is basically supposed to get you to think, maybe educate you a bit, make you laugh a bit. By the end of the day, all the rest of the serious work is left up to you. And that's actually, I apologize on my behalf that I can't do more. But wait, somebody mentioned, is my mic not loud enough for you guys? Hold up. Is this better? Is this way too loud? How's it for you, Yugopnik?
You always sound beautiful to me, and the louder the better, baby.
Yeah, see, that's what I like
guys,
to hear.
The guys having problems with microphones, you have that little button on YouTube where you can lower volume. It's absolutely revolutionary, but you can try it.
But yeah, so that's generally my point at the end of the day, because sometimes I get uncomfortable when people take us too seriously. At the end of the day, we're just random dudes on the internet. We have regular jobs just like you guys. Most of us are not that much more well-read, quote unquote, than you guys. It's just that we so happen to have gotten a early start, we can say, on the YouTube thing. We put a little more time to make stupid videos, and now we have an audience. That doesn't mean that we should be listened to. It doesn't mean that our opinion is of higher value, etc., etc. But also, that doesn't mean that quote unquote experts in a field are the only people you should be listening to. That's fallacious to equate as well. But just a point, just to center us and remind us that, bring us down to earth. And in my dialect of Arabic, we joke, and it's basically like put your ass on God's earth. What that literally means is like be humble and don't take yourself too seriously. But yeah, I think we can take another question because Felix fuck me. Dzerzhinsky, even though I know him, I never knew how to pronounce his name right. Is it Dzerzhinsky? Dzerzhinsky?
I don't
He's
know.
the
Start
secret.
with TS. If it's TS,
Yeah,
then it's Dzerzhinsky. But depends is he Polish. But if he's South Slavic, then it's Dzerzhinsky.
No, he was.
Don't even try, brother.
Yeah, he was. He's Polish, and he was the head of the Cheka. And he died.
Dzerzhinsky. It's a Z.
Yeah.
It's a weird.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a weird.
Thank you very much.
Sound.
Yes, but yeah, he asked any thoughts. By the way, thank you for the $5 donation. He said any thoughts on the Shia militias in Iraq right now? Yeah, many. None of them good. Yeah, they're not a good presence. Most of them are proxy forces, Iranian forces in Iraq, or they're directly supported by Iranian political motives in Iraq. They are responsible for a lot of ethnic cleansing that has happened around Iraq. They are also basically like mafia gangs. You pay for protection, basically. Anybody with enough money can get his own militia together, and then can start. It's this warlordism that ends up happening when there's no strong central state, and it's done nothing but negative. It's brought nothing but negative consequences to Iraq, their presence, and sadly, they're not going anywhere anytime soon.
I want to interrupt you real quick because I'm going to forget. Isn't it super funny that, for example, when the Italian mob, which commits mass murder, mass corruption, etc., and they all identify themselves as being led by Catholic, specifically values, nobody says, "Oh, look at what typical Catholics behave as." But when a Middle Eastern mafia, same fucking shit, uses the argument of being led by the ideas of Islam, everybody in the West is like, okay, this group represents, for example, Shia Muslims or other, etc. It's pretty. I just thought of that because most organized crime again is linked very often to some sort of weird esoteric religious symbolism, blah blah blah. But when it's white looking or white people doing it, then it has nothing to do with the religion, bro. But when somebody a bit more brown, when he kills his rival gang leader, calls the name of the Lord, then it was done because of religion. It is because they are evil barbarians.
No, exactly. That's actually a very good point. Yeah, I need to make that distinction. When I say Shia militias, I don't mean it's because they're actually they're Shiite. A lot of the people who have suffered at the hands of these militias are Shiite themselves. But the thing is, the reason I need to specify Shiite is maybe it's better to say Iranian proxy forces, because a lot of them are aligned with Iranian political motives. A lot of them are directly led by Iranian officers. So I just need to delineate that. When I say Shiite, it does not something like saying like, oh, Shiites are all bad because they have their militias. Nothing like this. Most of the people that suffer from sectarian violence usually end up being oppressed by militias of that same sect or ethnicity, right? Shias suffer under the hands of Shia militias. Sunnis suffer under the hand of Sunni militias, particularly back in 2005, 2006, and whatnot. So we need to also respect that. So thank you very much for specifying this.
Oh, right? No, I wasn't saying anything against how you put it. I mean, sometimes we got to call the organizations what they call themselves. I was just talking about the Western lens and perspectives of when a certain groups say they're doing something because of an ideological or religious belief. We always quote unquote believe them, and then we lower the respect we have towards that belief system because one group said, okay, this is what I'm doing with this belief system. But when somebody does the absolute same on the Western Hemisphere, we're looking at them as individuals and not representatives of this larger ideological or religious group. There's this big disbalance, which, I mean, it's a topic of its own, comes from Orientalism, etc., and all this shit.
No, exactly right. Completely correct. As for a silly topic, actually, this is not so silly, but in your part of the world, Yugopnik, because is this socialist monuments, whatnot, like that kind of stuff? Is stuff like that still around, or has decommunization been like thorough?
There has been quite a lot of decommunization, but nowhere even close to the absolutely batshit insane shit that they're doing over in Ukraine, right? So a lot of monuments are still up, a lot of streets still carry the name, a lot of buildings which were given by the government for local communities to come hang out at or do sports at, etc., etc., have not been completely privatized. So on the Balkan Peninsula, even though it's happening massively, again, it's not as bad as, for example, what we've seen in Estonia, Lithuania, Ukraine, Czech Republic. Jesus fucking Christ. Ukraine, they turned Stalin into Darth Vader. No, Lenin, even worse. Jesus Christ. Yeah.
They were named cities, entire cities. Dnipropetrovsk became Dnipro. Why? It's fucking retarded, man.
It's very stupid.
Excuse me. Well, sorry, I just realized I said that was a slur. That's something that needs to be corrected. My sincere apologies. That's not okay for me to say. So yeah, no, that's something that actually immediate self-crit. That's not something I should be saying. But yeah, sorry, go on.
Very good on you. But yeah, sometimes it's messed up because neither of us are speaking in our native tongue, and a lot of the English, at least in my case, that I've learned is usually from video games and movies, usually action movies, and my vocabulary is still filled with terms that my brain does not necessarily recognize as awful as. I'm not saying they're not awful terms and terms that should not be used. All I'm saying is that very often, sometimes I also make that mistake because I do not connect it to the very real and horrible conditions that certain people's, for which those slurs are used, are in. So yeah, if I accidentally blurt something out, I also just try and keep in mind that both in me and Hakim, this is not our first language and shit. That's not an excuse. But I'm only saying it as kind of a reason for why it might happen sometimes. It took me so long, dude, to stop saying cunt. And I genuinely didn't even know, like, what the fuck, why is this bad, blah blah blah. I never related it to a woman's reproductive organs or women in general, ever. I was just walking around calling people, cunts, and then when somebody told me, like, what the fuck was I doing all my life? But yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly right. No. And that's also that's actually very interesting. You know what? That's actually a interesting segue conversation thing, because it happens all the English misunderstandings, right? Or not only English misunderstandings, but sometimes you say something or an American will say something and you have no idea what the fuck they're saying. So you try to make sense of it. Maybe you like do the translation in your head, the two-step translation in your head, and you're like, but yeah, I was going to ask you, do you have any examples of like some things that you cannot for the life of you understand about English, or like the way Americans use their English, for example?
It's not even English specifically, but when they're interacting with someone, right? So I saw this some random post, and some girl added some dude on Tinder, and then she checked out the picture more closely and saw that the dude has an SS tattoo. So she asked him, what the fuck is that tattoo? He replied, it's the SS. And how, for example, a person from my part of the world who is anti-fascist would react to this, they would tell them to go fuck themselves, that they're a stupid piece of shit. If I ever see you outside, I'll break your fucking legs, and immediately unfriend them, right? But the American girl proceeded to ask him, are you a Nazi? Are you a fucking Nazi? And he's like, yes, I am, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, how dare you? No, she didn't say how dare you. That's a normal reaction. Her reaction was, how dare you admit that you're a Nazi? I'm misquoting her, obviously, but I feel like in English and in English-speaking countries, people get more pissed off at somebody admitting that there's something which is deemed bad, than them actually being that in silence. I mean, yes, now I'm maybe moving the topic too fucking wide from a very small question, but why were they so pissed about fucking Trump? He's just another president, just like any other one that they fucking had. Yeah, sure, he did some extra bad shit or whatever, but the main reason you guys were fucking pissed at him is because he was a realistic, in-your-face depiction of what the American state and the American political apparatus really, after you take off all the masks, what it actually truly really is. You fucking give Biden 3 whiskeys and fucking put him in a room with his fellow rich friends, and you'll see how that motherfucker talks.
And then the N-words will come out.
Yeah.
I swear, I bet you, I can see it in his face, man. My God, that he is an avid user. he looks it, but no, for sure. When you think about it, that's a very good point. Yeah, it's this weird American obsession with optics versus objective reality, or not reality, but material reality in specific. They don't care what the actual actions of the government are to an extent, but they care more about how those actions are portrayed, right? So it's a lot of
exactly, yes,
yeah. So it's a lot of how they. It's a lot of how they like to be presented, what words are used, collateral damage instead of civilian deaths, all that kind of stuff, right?
I mean, if the guy from the Tinder thing said, "No, I'm not a Nazi," her reaction would have been 10 times less intense than when he admitted to it. Even though he obviously is a Nazi, he has an SS tattoo, right? You see what I'm saying? It's the admittance of your backwards values that is seen as worse than actually having them.
Yeah.
Put your wife at home, not in the street. That type of fucking mentality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Very, very right on the money. Yeah. But now I'm trying to think. Actually, like pulling back from that. About misunderstandings in English. It's not misunderstandings. It's something that irritates me about the way some Americans, or I guess most Americans, the way they pronounce their words. They swallow their letters. They don't fucking the consonants. They don't pronounce them. They don't say little. They say little.
Little.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. These little. Yeah. These. See, I try to. This is the way people can find out I'm not actually American is because I can't consistently do that, right? I can say, for example, it's the room is a little warm, fine, right? But I can't, when I regularly speak, right? I can't specifically bring about that change in all the inflections. And sometimes I hear it and I'm like, why do you mumble? Do you realize how the difficulty in understanding? So at least for new English, this is a very nitpicky point, of course. It's their language. They have every right to speak it the way they see fit. But I'm just viewing it from a person who it wasn't my native language and the difficulties I would face when trying to learn it. And this was one of those things that would irritate me. But don't get me started. The worst thing about English is the spelling, right? Why does the word right? Yeah. Why does the word right have a G and an H?
To me, especially, I don't know how specifically in your native tongue it's written, but in my part of the world, specifically in Serbo-Croatian, right, one of the main and arguably the most spoken language in
Yugoslavia,
good old Yugoslavia, you are literally every letter is only one sound. You put together the sounds you want as letters for the word you want to pronounce. So you want to say apple. You don't write apple. You write apple. Apple. You don't, and to me that's why it's extra insane. The English spelling is extra insane, and the German spelling is it's not that bad. Oh my God, don't get me started on French.
But no, the French is a waste of time.
I feel like we literally we invented the best way to spell that I could ever think of, which is literally just spell it the way it's pronounced. And yet nobody cares. They just keep fucking doing their weird fucking shit that makes absolutely no sense.
Absolutely.
Apple. You would in Serbo-Croatian you would say apple. If it's you would say apple. If it's written like apple, like it's why do this? Why do this to yourself?
Yeah, it's pain, honestly. My God. And you know the worst part about it is I think this has happened. It happens when I write scripts normally. I don't know if this happens with you, but this is why I'm going to ask. Sometimes there are words I know as literature words, right? So I use them. I don't use them in my daily speech, but I want to use them in a script. And I use them in a script, and then I think about it. I'm like, how in the fuck is this word pronounced? Because I know how to spell it, right? But what was a word I recently yeah, a word I used was caprice to mean like changes in mood, right? And it's spelled caprice. So I would think logically it would be caprice, right? But no, it's caprice. Why the fuck is it caprice? I don't get it. Well, yeah. So it's just a measure of exposure, right? You just see them enough, and then you right. Somebody asked, how long will I stream? I'm gonna stream to make up for the 40 minutes of not fucking streaming because the thing wouldn't work. So yeah,
As long as we have fun, man.
Yeah, we're having a good time. It'll die down. Actually, don't worry about it. Just sit and enjoy. And by the way, I'm having a great time. We'll definitely be doing this way more. Like this will be more often. But yeah.
Yeah, you just gotta figure out the OBS thing, my friend.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just do it. We'll just do it the same way you did. But yeah,
sounds like a plan, brother.
Exactly. Somebody said, State Fishing or Illinois State Fishing, I don't know. Donated $5. Thank you very much. And he said, any chances collaborating with Anticonquista? If I remember correctly, I wrote to him a while back, and we were kind of in communication because I like the articles they posted, but I don't know how a collab would work out. That's something I would need to look into. I would like to do a little more collabs in the future, and I think right now I'm gonna have a little more time to start it. Next week I have a collab with two people, I think, next week. Yugopnik is definitely on the list for future collabs as well. So yeah, we'll definitely do that. People are saying my sound is too loud, so I'll reduce it for now. And if it's too loud, then let me know. If it's too quiet, excuse me, afterwards, then let me know. But yeah, also Joseph Yonkers, who donated $5 to this, so a total of $10. Thank you very much. He said, should Assyrians and Kurds and Turkmen in Iraq and Syria pursue autonomy or independence? Would it work if balkanization wasn't under US/Kurdish plan? I don't think independent countries are a good idea because all their respective quote unquote ethnic areas overlap. So there's no way in which you can cut it up so that they would all be satisfied. All of them will feel like part of their nations are cut off. It would make much more sense to have independent zones or autonomous zones within a larger confederation, like in a federative state of some sort. So yeah, I don't think it should be just, I think let's just plow through a couple of these so people don't feel like they have to wait forever. Dirty Dan gave $5, and thank you very, very much. Matt Volker, again, another $5. Thank you very much. He had a question. He said, what are your opinions on OnlyFans banning sexual content, and what are your opinions on sex work as an industry? This is a very interesting but also somewhat controversial question. If Yugopnik, do you want to answer this, or do you want to not talk about this for today?
No, I mean, I can tackle it if you want to go first, and then I'm pretty sure our opinions are gonna co-align. I'll just add if I have anything to add.
For sure, yeah. I can actually.
I'm putting the bomb in your lap, basically, baby.
so then you can clip yourself out later. Okay, yeah, no. This is how I personally view it. I think that there's two sides to it. There's the people who want to normalize sex work on one side, and there are those people. Okay, this is how we need to discuss it. We need to remember at the end of the day, sex work is divided by a very thin line, and that thin line is consent and based on access to things that make a modern life. Now, what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is for the vast majority of women who are in sex work fields, they aren't there by volition. They're there because they're forced, either forced directly under duress, under violence, or they're forced by economic conditions. It's the only way that they can support themselves or their children or what have you. That's what it is in most of the third world, for example. And there's this disconnect that we have between mostly white, middle class, upper middle class women in Western countries who decide to do sex work, who have the opportunity of choosing their clients, who have the opportunity of naming their price, who can say no if they want to, And those women in third world countries, or even within first world countries, but of a lower socioeconomic status, who are forced into these. So we need to have these two delineations, right? But when it comes to it as a field, personally, I think about it like this: if this is the caveat, if for every woman they have the right to full education, healthcare, housing, complete autonomy in their life, and opportunities to develop themselves in whatever way they want to, and they still decide to choose sex work as an avenue, then in my personal opinion, it is their choice. They can do whatever they want. But I personally have a problem with it when it enters into the field of a woman being forced to, like I said, either because of her economic conditions, or because of like she has a pimp or something that's forcing her into this. But you also have an interesting parallel that a lot of, I don't know what you call them, sex pests or fucking brochelists. I don't know what they're called, but you have these people who pretend to be woke and will pretend to be super pro sex work, but their only perspective, their only drive isn't actually to support women in these fields. They just want an outlet for their own perversions. It shows because the way we definitely look at it. I'll give an example. You know, when you look at OnlyFans, right? There's been this idea that's kind of been like, oh, you know, you OnlyFans women struck gold, right? They all make so much money. That's not actually what it is. I think the average that they make is like $200. The average OnlyFans creator makes like $200 a month or something. And the base, the consumptive, the consumers of this product basically, usually tend to be extremely toxic, extremely demanding, overbearing, and these women are forced to basically satiate this aspect, not out of, again, a sense of personal empowerment, but again as a sort of out of economic necessity. That's, I think, I feel like I may be repeating myself at this point, but when a woman is stripped of her dignity and forced into these things just solely to so she can feed herself, it stops being what's so-called sex work. It starts being exploitative. And I don't like the fact that there are people who try to paint a broad brush over all of it and try to point at only, for example, mostly white, mostly middle class or upper middle class women who have options, and try to paint that as solely the thing, what sex work is, when there's a lot of negative downsides. And then it comes to the conversation, I think, of two political paths. One of them is don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Basically, like, oh, we should cut away all the negative aspects and keep that aspect, which I mentioned, in which women are all they have capacity to feed themselves, their access to education and healthcare and housing and whatnot. And then if they still choose it, they can. That's one aspect. But under capitalism, I don't think this is a realistic aspect. And then you have the other aspect, which is just ban it all outright. I don't know where I lie between these two, and I don't think I have done enough reading on it. And most importantly, I'm not a sex worker. I'm not in this field. I think the proper people to ask about these things are those who are directly in the midst of it. And also, we have to take a look, or take into account the not class background. I don't want to use that term, but the mentality of the people. You shouldn't go to the highest earning people within this field and ask their opinions. You should ask more the average, or those who are most directly affected by the negative aspects, despite them also being within the field. I hope you understand what I mean. What do you think, Yugopnik?
Very eloquently put. Yes, I mean, in general, when you look at almost any field of employment, which obviously sex work is a more complicated issue, but when you look at any field of employment inside of the capitalist superstructure, unless you are the owner, and unless you are in a financial situation in which you can allow yourself some additional freedoms, or as Hakim eloquently put, when you're allowed to have a choice, almost every profession becomes exploitative in one way or another, with sex work being, especially in developing countries, but also for poor people in in developed countries as well, is a problem, is potentially the most harmful type of profession that you can go into. But I mean, I try to have a conversation with as many sex workers that I know in my personal life, and also online, etc., etc. And when it comes to specific individuals which have managed to take a step out of, for example, selling their body in a different way with, for example, an employer in a specific, more traditional job where they would be causing even more physical or psychological damage to themselves. And if they manage to get out of this sort of predicament and make a living through sex work, then all power to them, as long as they don't have a pimp, or if they themselves are not a pimp, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, inside, again, we have to deal with the fact that we live in a system in which most people, I would even say the vast majority of people, enter industries not because they want to or because they have a passion for it, but because they have absolutely no other choice. So at the end of the day, I mean, just listen to the people in those specific industries, as Hakim said, but also, keep in mind that when somebody comes into this sort of conversation, I'm not just talking about sex work, I'm talking about every industry that you can think of. And when they come in and they overtly praise it too much, or in the contrast, when they want something like this to completely cease to exist, which, for example, a lot of people who operated mines and made, for example, a lot of money from mining, but then moved into green energy, and then started investing funds into closing mines, and for miners, for example, specifically to lose jobs. They might also be coming from a different spot. And always try to be sensitive. Yes, you might have talked to 10 sex workers that are making a decent living and they're okay with it, but there might be a sex worker who has experienced something absolutely horrendous that I don't wish on my worst enemy. And there might be a reason why they are 100% completely against sex work in general. We, as people who are outside of this industry, need to take a few steps back and try to see it as it is, to the extent that we can. But we'll see as legislation and as time passes what the best approach to kind of, let's call it, managing this industry is. But inside of capitalism itself, the only thing that I would like to kind of put forward is that by completely delegalizing something, you almost always push it into either the red or the gray sector, where if that specific worker for that specific industry was massively exploited in the green sector, in the gray and the red sector, they will be exploited 10 times more. So we should be very careful with, even if, for example, we completely believe that sex work should be abolished, etc., etc. We know somebody that had awful experiences, blah, blah, blah. But we should understand that making it completely illegal will not remove this industry from existing. It will just push it underground, where much worse exploitation could potentially happen. And just number two, I'm sorry if I'm dragging it on too much.
No.
Number two is we should also not put cultural stigma on sex and sexual exploration and sexual expression, which is and look at it as completely different to other forms of expression or even professions, etc., etc. I mean, I know it's a cliche at this point, but when you work, 10-hour shifts washing dishes in a kitchen, you are also selling your body. You are also, putting yourself in a position in which you would never you would have never wanted to be in the first place. So we should try and look at all of these on a relatively similar level and not stigmatize sex workers as something lower or something worse or something less than other people who engage in physical work,
Yeah, very, very aptly put, very beautifully put. Some people I mentioned, if you can turn your volume up a bit, just on your microphone. Yeah. So and then people in the chat, let us know if it's okay now. But yeah, no, I completely agree. And somebody also, somebody had a message in the chat. I don't remember who it was, but they said something along the lines of, saying, "Oh, listen to X is identitarian BS." What we're saying is not just like, "Oh, the people in that field are the only ones who are qualified to speak on it." No, what we're saying is that to have a fully like a well-rounded analysis of something, you need to get the perspective of those people. Without it, your analysis is standing on only a single leg. But it doesn't mean that everything that's mentioned from a particular field is completely binding and all that kind of stuff. Same thing, like if you're to go and talk to doctors about something or to analyze the medical system somewhere, you don't need to only talk to doctors. In fact, I think it would be negative to only be discussing with medical staff. It would be better to analyze administrators and patients and all other aspects around it, so you can have a full-rounded analysis. That's just my point.
Of course. Yeah, that's why I said just sometimes the stories we hear are going to be intense, both in the positive and the negative. And while listening, we also need to take a step back and understand that everybody's story and opinion is subjective, and that the truth lies in far deeper lines than the leaf itself. That was a bad metaphor. You know how the fucking leaves have the little lines inside? So I was like, okay, the opinion is a fucking leaf. So look at the lines in the fucking leaf. Jesus, I'm English, man. I do not London today very well.
SPESD, maybe. Let's see if people will catch on what that person mentioned. Anyways, and I'll let you know on Discord through the DMs. But yeah, the next question, I think, something that's actually interesting to mention, is Dirty Dan, who donated $2. Thank you very much. He said, "What do you think of legalizing hard drugs?" I would like to hear your opinion on this, actually. Not only because, I mean, Yugoslavia is, or at least the Balkans are known for being kind of like an avenue for it nowadays. Actually, before you start talking, I'm going to mention a funny little tidbit, because I mentioned the story on Paul's stream a long time ago. But I was getting a haircut somewhere, and basically, this wasn't in Iraq, I was somewhere else, and I was getting a haircut, and the person cutting my hair was a Balkan man. I think he was Kosovo Albanian or Kosovo Serb, I can't remember. But he was looking, he was cutting my hair, and he asked me, he was like, "Yeah, so where are you from?" And I was like, "I'm from Iraq." And he looks at me, and he was like, "Iraq? Did you know that you guys have the best cocaine?" And I'm just thinking, I was like, okay, well, then, if anybody would know that, it would be a Kosovo Albanian. I don't think that's a racist thing to say.
No, it's not. Their weed is really good. Their weed is excellent as well. I mean, we all know about Afghanistan and heroin, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my question, actually, is, what is your opinion on that, on hard drugs?
I mean, I think I talked about it multiple times, to the extent to which at this point, I'm not even sure if I have a hard stance on it. But I have had, what word should I use? I have interacted with people that have actively consumed large amounts of narcotics. I have interacted with people that have actively sold it, some very successfully, some very, very, very unsuccessfully. And from my personal real life experiences, I've seen a lot more harm being done in communities because they had to quite literally sneak around and find new ways through which they will bring the supply to the demand and not get arrested at the same time. So we're talking turf wars, we're talking being killed by police, we're talking, overusage because you're afraid that the police, because you don't have access to a psychologist or a detox center when you're close to overdosing, etc., etc. What I'm saying is, in my experience, my personal experience, I've seen a lot more people suffer because of the illegality of the narcotics and not necessarily the narcotic itself. That said, though, there are specific drugs. If you're a doctor, you might be able to say more. Well, likes of heroin and methamphetamines, which have massive physical addictive properties, and they are not the drugs I am about to talk to. But for the others, which are more psychologically addictive, we have seen a lot of research being actively done and having been done that shows that consuming on a regular basis, which leads to complete addiction and quite literally living for the drug, coincides always with poverty-induced areas and is a form of escapism, which leads you down a very, very dark and horrible path. And if there were tools inside of a given country, which has almost always a limited budget, those people could potentially have been helped from continuing down that path. And why did I specifically mention limited budgets? Because sometimes the choice is between one or the other. Sometimes the choice is between giving $50 million to the local police force or giving $50 million to specified medical personnel, which will help these individuals, creating institutions which will help these individuals. I think this is a much more important conversation to be had than, should we legalize or decriminalize, which also are two different things. The conversation should be about how do we actually help people who are currently addicts, and how do we help people who potentially will become them. From my perspective, decriminalization is a good path to take for narcotics which are not defined as what was the level 4 physiological addiction. And that funds should be moved from paying cops to beat the shit out of quote unquote their junkie asses, and into actually getting them the help they need. That's my point of view. Complete delegalization, like my mind and my soul is telling me, okay, we absolutely should do it. I just am not impressed at this moment with the data I've seen on it, to think that just throwing it out into the market and letting, for example, if it's legal for just companies and corporations to be, selling them on the street corner, I think that could also lead to massive problems. But I'm willing to completely change my mind on this opinion. The only thing I am not, because of personal experiences, is to support the idea that it should be fought with strength and ruthlessness. It literally does not work. Even if you hate even drug users and dealers and everybody, fighting it with fucking a militarized police force does not fucking work.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, I overlap like 95% with your opinion. I think the conversation should be more skewed towards the people who are most affected by it, rather than the concept of drugs themselves. But I think also when we look at the research on it and the general effects, it's very clear that the vast majority of so-called hard drugs bring far more negative consequences to the people that use them than any sort of positivity, whatever it may be considered for that person that uses it. With that being said, though, the point I disagree with is not the militarized police part. I don't think you should have, militarized police coming and beating up like homeless people who do drugs. That's messed up. But I think very stringent punishments based on top level members of organizations that cause this stuff, right? What I mean, for example, is like not even the low level dealers like on the street. I'm talking about the people who directly organize, administrate, people who are like head figures in organizations. Death penalty. That's what I personally think. But like these people, these are the types that you have to kind of make an example out of. When it comes to mid-level and low-level people, these people need to be rehabilitated into society. They should be shown the consequences of the actions they've done, like how it's affected their communities, and like re-education. I think a lot of good can be done with a solid program of education and conversation and direct interaction with the people who are most affected by, for example, drugs in this case. But this idea of re-education can apply to many other things. But otherwise, I agree completely with what you said, Habibi.
No, completely. And when it comes to the leadership, I would even talk about the middle management and even the street hustlers. Yes, like probably, I hate using percentages, but let's say 90% of them got into that quote unquote job that they got into not because they fucking love fucking running cocaine, but because they did not have any other opportunities in life. But those who have built genuine empires out of that, out of selling, be it narcotics, be it weapons, be it anything that is quite literally designed to harm, should face the harshest of consequences, because at that point I don't think that person can be rehabilitated, with the full all due respect.
Yeah, no, for sure. I saw an interesting question in the chat. Somebody said he's asking us, how did we learn English? And I'm interested. How did you learn English?
So originally, when I was a kid, I watched all the German TV, and I started speaking some, childish German or whatever. But then, for some reason, they stopped showing German TV everywhere, and they moved it to English. And my small amount of German understanding made learning English very easy. I only started, getting formal education in English when I was, 11, 12. In school, and that lasted for 10 years after that. But already when I started getting formal education, my English was relatively decent, I believe, and it came mostly from playing a shit ton of video games, and not just playing the video games, but also like talking to some Iraqi motherfucker, some Indian motherfucker, some motherfucker from Texas, some motherfucker from Brazil, all of us in English, and actually getting to talk to another person which speaks this language without having to spend $50,000 and fly halfway across the world, I think really helped me with learning the language, understanding the language, knowing how to properly use it, and then the formal education just helped me out with the grammar and how to write and shit like that. And you?
I think it's in a similar sense to you. It first started with consuming English language media. Excuse me. Sorry, it's very late over here. But it began first with consuming English language media, and then afterwards, it slowly developed. I think mostly with engaging with literature and speaking with people. So I think the greatest development began when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, where I started interacting with native English speakers, or at least not native English speakers, but at least people who spoke English way better than I did online. And then afterwards, it's the second wave of improvement happened when I started reading a lot more, especially when I started reading theory, because then you're really forced to you're thrown into this sea of linguistics that you're not used to, like grammatical structure, sentence structure, vocab that's used, and you're really forced to grapple with it. The best way I can explain it is, imagine, for the native English speakers or the Americans in chat, imagine if I were to give you something written by Lenin or Marx or what have you, but it's in Spanish or French or German or something, and you had to work through that. Of course, if you have no background in those languages, it's going to be impossible for you. But if you have a bit of a background, like you can kind of speak a bit of Spanish, right, then you can build up slowly. And if you read enough of that, then you're going to expand your vocab. You're going to learn appropriate grammatical and sentence structure, etc. And then you'll be able to, you'll improve in the language. That's how I did it, basically. But yeah, it wasn't easy. It was a many-year-long process. And by the way, I still hold to this day, I think Yugopnik agrees, that English is a stupid fucking language. It is beyond. It makes no sense.
Could not agree more. But then I mean, it's probably a stupid question, but there's no formal education in school on English in Iraq, right?
No, surprisingly, there is. There's English and there's French. My family members of mine took French, and I took English.
So it's a choice between the two.
Yeah, and it depends what school you go to and everything. I think some schools even had German. But
Same
some
here.
schools, some schools had Kurdish as a second language. My mother took Kurdish as a second language in high school. So that's interesting. And that's you come to Iraq, you'll notice that there's a lot of the most most people in Iraq don't speak, who are not Kurdish, don't speak Kurdish, but they know phrases and numbers and stuff in Kurdish, like basically very, very basic Kurdish, because of this exposure that happened like the 70s, 80s, 90s in schools. Nowadays, it's not so much, to my knowledge. But yeah, it's kind of been really, segregated, right? If you want to learn Kurdish, you kind of just have to go into Kurdistan. No, you can't do it. I mean, you can, but it's more complicated. But yeah. Let's see, somebody else. Mr. Chesito Star has sent CRCs, I think, is a Costa Rican currency, right? 500 of them. So thank you very much. Aposkas and $5. He said infrared is rising. Well, if he makes good content, then why not? And then, the same person, Mr. Chesito Star, has asked the question, hey, Hakim, how can merge Islam? How can we merge Islam and Marxism? I'm writing a book on that, actually. So you can stay tuned for that. It's not a conversation that I'm willing to have so late into today. By the way, sorry that I'm just derailing the conversation to read out the sutra. I don't want these, like, it's...
Of course.
They went out of their way to donate something. I feel the need to...
Absolutely.
My sincere thanks, of course. But yeah, Wickham47 sent £1. Thank you very much. Or €1. Excuse me. Carlos Zaragoza sent $5. Thank you very much. Jenks Broadwell sent 20 Bulgarian... What is the currency in Bulgaria? It's not dinar.
In Macedonia, it's denar. In Serbia, it's dinar. In Bulgaria, it's lev.
Lev, that's it, yeah. And he said, have some cash, you wonderful bastards. Question, thoughts on the chance of socialism being in any way accepted back on the Balkans, considering the current views toward it? I think this is a question for you.
I think I kind of, again, thank you for the donation. I think I kind of touched on it previously, but basically there is a chance, just like anywhere else in the world, but unfortunately because of massive propaganda and massive funding that has been given to center-right and far-right organizations in the country, a lot of people have been completely pushed towards co-identifying socialist ideas with something that has absolutely nothing to do with it, and are therefore very afraid of those said ideas and look at them as something backwards and a step, again, sorry for repeating myself, backwards and not a step forwards in developing their own countries. So all the steps that are going to be necessary to introducing socialist revolutionary thought in other countries are going to be 3 times more difficult in these specific states. But these states can still be used, and these people can still be used as a valid and legitimate source of practice and information, which maybe other people from other parts of the world which have not experienced a socialist revolution before might not know and might not have been given it to them by their by their forefathers and mothers, quote unquote. So basically very low chances, very difficult. Fuck me.
I mean, that's I agree with you. Again, it boils down to, we're repeating ourselves, but it boils down to educate, agitate, organize. It's not impossible, but it's more difficult, and you're going to have to learn the history very, very well so that you can counter, because this is the thing. This is something that annoys me about the conversations. Sometimes you meet people or you see people and you discuss socialism, and then they'll tell you, why are you talking about, for example, Stalin or the Soviet Union or Cuba or something? It's like, these things happened so long ago. Why does it matter? It's because the second you start talking about socialism, the first thing people are going to start saying, or even like, it's what's it called? A knee-jerk reaction is, but 100 million dead. What about Stalin? Oh, Mao ate babies. Fucking like this shit. So you need to know the history. So that you can counter the appropriate things. So then you can set the historical context. So once you can relieve those doubts, you can introduce appropriate analysis. Because even if you were to completely agree with them, like some trots do, and like these people who just kind of completely concede everything, you just end up with a very weird, hypocritical, and frankly a pathetic perspective of like, those people are bad, but we're going to be better. I promise, we're going to do it better this time. It's not a good look, right? Nobody will take you seriously that way. You look stupid. You have to realize that you don't need to abandon the true historical context, right? And that doesn't mean, by the way, that bad things didn't happen and that you should be able to explain and also appropriately criticize. But it does kind of go to show that if you truly want people on your side, you're going to need to know, for example, in the case of the Balkans, the specific history of the areas, and know and develop your answers to questions and doubts people have, so that once they're cleared up, you can mix that with an appropriate analysis of their current conditions, so you can continue this new, hopefully pro-Yugoslav unity socialist message going into the 21st century. But yeah. Let's see. Andorfi John, excuse me. They sent 50 Swedish crowns, I believe. And it says Hiya. So Hiya back. Jorge G sent $10. Thank you very much. And he said Castro and Chavez talk about how socialists should be willing to be criticized and even dragged in the streets by the masses. Why are socialists so weak in the West? Is it our individualist culture? Do you mind if I take this?
Go on.
Yeah, because I want to hear your opinion on what I think, and then I want to get your opinion as well. I really do think there is like an individualist, quote unquote, individualist emphasis in modern Western leftism, or just because of the West and post-Enlightenment secular ideology, how it's very individual and property right-based. You end up with very fragmented ideas of how organizations should be built, and you also end up with these mismatched methods towards organization that are crippled by individualist tendencies, I think. And that's why just on generally, it's one of the reasons, of many reasons, that the left in modern Western discourse hasn't really risen that high and hasn't really gotten above the usual nonsense of, sock them, get rid of student loans and healthcare and stuff. What do you think about it, Yugopnik?
Literally nothing to add, but I don't know, maybe additionally it's a relatively cultural issue as well, because of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s into 90s, for the majority white population in the country, everything was kind of handed to them, and I'm not saying that nobody put in effort, but I'm saying those were years of very intense economic growth, and they have been so generationally influenced by it that they still expect things to turn out for the better, no matter how much things are declining. And this leads you to a, again, reformist perspective in which you feel like the US specifically was able to create something which has not been ever created anywhere in the world. People call this American exceptionalism, which leads you to thinking that certain things can be achieved in the US in a much more quote-unquote civilized manner than they were achieved somewhere else, or as compared to people trying to achieve it somewhere else. So that is why the Western leftist will very often be the loudest critic of something that is happening halfway across the world, while not having really ever seen anything even close to that sort of movement building in their own country. So their sense of exceptionalism allows them to criticize that which very often they either don't understand or understand very little of, because it's very easy to spit downwards from the 10th floor than to spit from the 1st to the 10th. But their floors are slowly crumbling down, and relatively soon they'll understand what it is to be spitting from floor 1.
Yeah, I can listen to you talk for hours.
Thank you, brother.
But Coffee Time sent £5. Thank you very much. They said, who is our favorite Soviet historian or Soviet history books? I don't have a favorite Soviet historian because I usually never bother to learn their names because it's usually one book and that's it.
Same. You scared me so much. I was like, he's gonna start naming like 10 names, and I'm gonna fucking shit myself.
No worry, no. I'm normal. In this regard, I'm normal. So when it comes to actual historians, no. But Soviet history books, There are a couple. There is a 3-part series on the on this history of the Soviet Union, and it goes in like 20-year periods. I think there was a 4th that ends in the period up to 1989. You can find it on archive. It was uploaded by Ismail Badio, the guy who I shouted out on Twitter a while back. He's a unsung hero of the internet left, because the guy has scanned so many old and rare and out-of-print books. It's amazing. But that's the only thing that comes to mind. I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to mention, Yugopnik.
No, nothing really. I just, when I now am in a very amateurish way Googled historians from Soviet Union. Google gives me a woman called Fitzpatrick, Stephen Cohen, a person called Conquest, Richard Pipes, man, such Kazakh or Russian or Uzbeki names, beautiful Muscovite names. Stephen, Ronald, Orlando, oh yes, famous Leningradsky Orlando. Jeffrey Hosking, we still do not see a single Soviet-sounding name. Robert C. Tucker, J. Arch Getty, Yuri, okay, we found a Yuri, but Yuri is literally super young, so he probably has been writing from modern Russia. We have William, and okay, finally we have a Vladislav Zubok. Sounds kind of Polish. There we go. From the list of 20 people, 2 seem to have maybe at one point stepped on Soviet soil, but Google is recommending these beautiful individuals. And then we wonder why almost all information that we have, not even about socialist experiments, about the whole non-Western world being so out of line and out of touch with the realities that people live, on the ground. I mean, we wonder about this, and the answer is very fucking simple, because the only people legitimize this proper, real, truthful academics are motherfuckers called Robert.
Yeah, exactly. No, you have such a point, man. There's something that I hate about the implication. There's this idea that, I'll tell you right now, I've never referenced a Soviet book or a Soviet, what's it called?
Because you're going to get shit.
Yeah. As a source. Every time I want to send somebody a primary source, I always make sure to select either an anti-communist, a direct anti-communist, or if I can get away with it, a Western author, always, right? An American or British or French or something, just not a Soviet author, because then people have this idea that Soviet authors would be incredibly, ideologically rigid, and it's gonna be just propaganda. I know for a fact these people have never read a work from like a historical work or something from Soviet authors, because if you actually do take a look at their work, they have so much nuance. They're so much more refreshing than reading okay, this is the best way I can put it like this is, what you think Soviet authors are like? Western authors writing on the Soviet Union, they're actually like that. The Conquest and Fitzpatrick, and these people, right? They actually write in a weird, rigid, ideological ways based not on fucking facts and research, but basically on presuppositions and trying to drive an ideological point, right? When you actually look at Soviet authors and levels of criticism and stuff, of course, sometimes you see some stuff that's garbage, but you have to remember that over the course of the Soviet Union's existence, they published literally millions of books. So of course, some of them are going to be garbage. Most of the serious work that I've read has always been incredibly nuanced, and even from a critical side, has been very refreshing. It's the sort of thing that it's kind of funny to say, but I've sometimes read stuff within Soviet works that I personally think that if I was a censor, if I worked at the appropriate censorship bureau and I saw this particular part of a text, I would censor it personally. And but in Soviet works, I see this stuff, and I wish I had an example off the top of my head. My library isn't with me because I moved there. I didn't bring my books with me. I'll slowly transition them here over a while. But yeah, it happened a couple of times recently, even. So that's just a point to make. But yeah, I'm glad we do see eye to eye. We see eye to eye on almost everything. I mean, of course, we're in love, so That should be.
Yes, completely.
Yeah. But yeah, let's see. Matt Volker, he sent $20. Thank you very much. He said, "Thank you for your input. Both views I feel are very informative. I think he's talking about our sex work opinions." He's like, and I totally agree with Yugopnik's point on what happens when you make an industry illegal, which, yeah, I completely agree with you as well. Red Rusky sent €5, and he said, "A question for both of you. What do you think of entryism, aka infiltrating organizations with the goals of bringing its members over to the communist cause?" Do you want to take this one?
Sure. So, in every single historical moment in which a revolution was actually successful, we did have a vast network of people in almost all structures of industry, government, etc., etc. I feel like the fascists are much better at infiltrating than we are because they have no ideals to give up in order to infiltrate. But while a socialist, for example, getting to the top of an industry, or God forbid, the police force, I know, Jesus, everybody's screaming in the background, is much more difficult just from the perspective of the Marxist ideals that one holds. But I do think it is a very pragmatic approach when it's like low-level stuff, like which is very important still, like making a union, agitating people towards the left, etc., etc. But if we're talking about some, actual revolutionary activity, etc., etc., having people in key positions of power, who, yes, unfortunately, in order for them to get to those positions, they probably would have to do 1 or 2 or 25 pretty bad things, but would be very pragmatic and practical for the physical, and I'm trying not to use words that are going to get us banned here, for the physical implementation of the change of the ideological superstructure of a given country. Yeah, we can't get that was you understand what I just basically said.
No, definitely don't.
Yeah, I hope the public, the viewers do as well. So yes, it is very helpful to have such individuals there, though maybe a better approach very often, which was implemented, is turning them when they are already in a key position of power, right? You have a chief of police, yes, shoot me. You have a high-ranking general. You have a majority owner, board member of a corporation that makes guns. And those individuals being, for example, potentially turned, literally gives much more power and more instruments to the hands of a revolutionary cell or movement in a given region. So this is more like art of war type of thinking than it is Marxist thinking. But on the ground, when it's fucking dirty and people are committing the die, it's much things are very messy, and sometimes messy approaches get less messy by preparing for them previously, which is again fucking messy.
Yeah, for sure. I am personally of the opinion I don't like the ideas of quote-unquote infiltration, because historically they've never worked. The only way that I can even see it somewhat being feasible is infiltration within the military and then having a coup. But a coup is not a revolution. That's the only way that can lead to power, in my opinion. Because when you infiltrate,
I didn't mean it like it's the main thing, or it's even the driving forces. It's even 5% of the power group. I just meant like it could help. If you could potentially, then why not?
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you completely, because this is historic, especially over the 20th century. We've seen this time and time again happen, right? Some socialist quote-unquote revolutions were actually coups. Not all of them, vast majority of them were revolutions. Prime amongst those, to be used as an example, is the Bolshevik Revolution. That was a true revolution. As much, the what's it called? Western historians can seethe and cope all they want. It was not a coup. But yeah, when it comes to infiltration, I don't like the idea or the concept, because organizations exist with particular class interests always, no matter what they be, and you can't just change the substance by, when you titrate, if you remember chemistry, right? And you have a buffer. Maybe this is too stupid of a fucking example, but you can have when you do we have a buffer and you titrate, for example, an acid into a base, and what happens is it slowly increases, but it's very gradual, and then you have a sudden shift, a qualitative shift, to be dialectical about it, and then with a pH rise, for example, or the pH decline, when that perspective doesn't translate into organizations. You can't just kind of trickle in leftism or communists and then all of a sudden an entire organization will be run by communists. These are structured directly to serve particular class interests.
Yes.
You cannot just infiltrate the police force and make it a communist police force that will then serve the revolution. Exactly. That's not to say that you can't bring them to your side, but that's not infiltration. That's appropriate education, agitation, and organization. So, long story short, I don't think either Yugopnik or I agree with entryism, but we can see the small-scale tactical advantages that can be won with appropriate planning through their use. I hope that's a non-controversial way of talking about it or mentioning it.
Completely agreed. Yes, you gave substance to my very broad sort of random example giving, trying to be edgy or whatever.
Habibi, please. Okay, you're but the beautiful canvas I painted on. So yeah. Well, let's see what else. Somebody's been writing in the chat the entire time. Talk about Zizek. What is there to say about Zizek? Do you have anything to mention about Zizek?
Dude, I love you. Thank you for mentioning Zizek, but I have talked so many times about Zizek.
It's tiring.
Yeah, it is.
It's tiring. Yeah, maybe next time, maybe when we'll do it a bit earlier in the day. Hopefully, we won't have any technical issues, and then we can discuss Zizek. So I'm sorry.
He's gonna have a new book come out soon. So maybe I can go through it and sometimes we can talk about it.
Yeah, he shits out books like it's nobody's fucking business, man.
Dude, I even based one of my videos around it. When COVID was right about to begin, he wrote Pandemic. It guessed 90% of everything. Crazy right-wing militias not wanting to get vaccinated. People co-identifying mask wearing and isolation as impeachment on their civil rights. People obviously not being able to stomach the fact that if nature wants to, it can fuck us sideways and not even blink twice, and all of us are going to be lost in time and fucking space. So that's why they create conspiracies about, it's man-made, it's from a lab, etc., etc. Those are only 4 examples of like 50 that he gave as specific examples. And what he gave as a potential solution, what he likes to call war communism, is when all of society comes together and understands when they have a very big problem that previously established normalcies and normality is completely removed in order for a specific time period, in order for people during a specific time period to be able to defeat this massive problem that is coming in their direction. And in countries where quite literally something like this has been taken up completely, like China, Vietnam, etc., we've seen almost no cases where, we say we fucking lock everything down, shut the fuck up, we're gonna wait for this fucking thing to move, and then we open things up again, and not like half measures like fucking everywhere,
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, very interesting points to mention. Somebody actually asked something, it's out of left field, but I like the question. Audie asked, as a non-theory question, any media recommendations for people trying to learn your mother tongues? I can mention for Arabic, but I'm also interested in what you have to say. But for Arabic, it sounds silly, but just standard news outlets I can recommend too. Al Jazeera is good, and Al Arabiya. These two are very good. Both of them have running 24/7, what's it called, YouTube live stream things that you can listen in. I think some of them are even subtitled, and they have open articles on their websites that you can read. It's all in MSA, Modern Standard Arabic, and it's not that complicated to read. it's not the easiest thing you can be reading, but I think if you introduce yourself slowly into it, then you'll be able to pick up a lot, especially vocab wise. So that's my recommendation. But I'm wondering what you have to say about that, Yugopnik.
Well, I don't really have like things that I would recommend as, for example, news sources, etc., etc. But I would recommend watching movies, shows, especially from the 90s during the wars. All of the different countries, yes, made a lot of propaganda, but also made some of the greatest cinematic achievements I can modestly say that I have ever experienced. But also even old Yugoslav movies, etc., etc., from different directors of great talent and skill. And most of them, are subtitled. A lot of them have been made with the Western audience in mind. Obviously, it's going to be a bit difficult to find them, but the RR Mimeti is all over. You didn't get that one? Oh, you got that one.
Yeah,
all over the internet. So you can easily find them there. There's a few documentaries here and there, but that are decent. But like, there's not really a lot of subtitles. But yeah, consume movies, shows. There's really epic shit that a lot of people from the Anglosphere are missing out on because subtitles scary.
Yeah. My God. No, but honestly, I really second the oh my God, what's the term in English? I second that recommendation. Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, they understand what I mean.
Yeah, I have an idea. You start talking in Arabic and I start talking in Serbo-Croatian. I'm like, fuck everybody. Šta ima, brate, me nemoj jebemo u pičku da ga jebem.
Hey, well, baby. All right. Okay, let's see. I think let's finish off these last few super chats, then we can just have some meme discussion, and then we can end it for today. Because there's still, there's some big questions here, but we can give like quick answers to them. Eric, Eric Milke, who sent $5, thank you very much, said, was Tito a revisionist for allowing Hollywood movies to be made in Yugoslavia? No, he was a revisionist for other reasons. I'm kidding. I'm only partially kidding. But
as you should, yeah. He was.
Yeah. But
still a fan of the man, but yeah, he was. Yeah.
But also, Dino was some fucking Chad shit. Let me tell you something. The Soviets sent military aid at one point. This was in the 60s, I think, to Yugoslavia, and they sent brand new tanks. It was, I think, at the time, their T-63, the ones right before the T-72, the prior model, and they were brand new at the time. And they sent like 30 of them or 50 of them or something to Yugoslavia as military aid. And Tito, he went and he shook hands with Khrushchev, and he was like, "Oh, thank you very much." And the next fucking day, he sells them for like $10 million a piece to the US. What a fucking like. Dude,
he sold the whole space program to the US, and like 70% of the things weren't even working. Absolutely fucking, I don't know, Giga Chad, Sigma.
No, honestly.
Male. Actually, yes. So everybody else during the Cold War was a little beta cuck. The US and the USSR were alphas, and the alphas was fighting. And Yugoslavia, together with all the countries in the League of Non-Alliance, were Sigmas, because they removed themselves from this whole fucking thing, and they were like, we just exist in our own world. We do not concern ourselves with alphas and betas.
Oh my God.
Sigma Yugoslavia, daddy.
This shit's so fucking funny. Oh my God! Yeah, no, exactly right. And the greatest Sigma of them all was Tito. I can already imagine the the music, the track.
The
Sigma grind sounds. Sell Soviet tanks.
Somebody clip what I said and then make a video. It would be nice.
But yeah, so that's that. Lord Sather donated 50 Norwegian crowns. Thank you very much. He said, "Hey, Hakim and Hugo, hope you're doing well. We're doing very well. I'm doing very well because I'm speaking with Yugopnik right now. But yeah,
I'm fucking hating every moment of this shit. No, I'm having so much fun. Thank you.
Honestly, genuinely. But yeah, Carlos Zaragoza sent $5. Thank you very much. He said, "How should leftist organizations in Western countries try to bring about socialism? Is a peaceful or at least not full war revolution possible?" This is the thing. Everything is possible, right?
Yes.
but it depends on the underlying conditions and the maturity of the of the circumstances, the revolutionary circumstances surrounding. How should leftist organizations in the West to try to bring about socialism? Again, educate, agitate, organize. It will be slow. It will be boring. It will take a long time, many years. But to quote Lenin, there are days where years happen. There are years where days happen. So it's don't be discouraged if the work seems like it never ends. Again, to quote Lenin or to reference Lenin, he did not believe in 1915. He said that he did not believe that he would see the revolution within his lifetime. And in 1917, he was leading the Bolshevik Revolution. Life comes at you fast. Is what I'm trying to say. So as long as there's dedicated work being done, particularly in local communities, but also outside of them, then you can slowly but surely build towards a revolutionary moment. Now, is a peaceful revolution possible? Yes, the Soviet Revolution was a peaceful one. The Bolshevik Revolution had practically no bloodshed. What was bloody was the civil war imposed by 14 militaries of 14 other nations invading, as well as the White Army and other associated reactionary forces causing civil war. But the actual revolution itself and the conquest of power was bloodless. That's our hope, that we can always attain power peacefully, but history has proven that to be sadly just a pipe dream. It's not something that we can rely on.
Or you can be Sigma Pol Pot and achieve it relatively non-violence and then commit mass violence. That's the reformism versus revolution. So you do a reformist change of government, and then after that you go bananas and you do a revolution on yourself. It's absolutely phenomenal. Sigma grind set, baby.
Exactly right. But yeah, you take anybody who has glasses and you put them in a hole or whatever the fuck they did. Jesus Christ.
It's awful. Yeah, I'm sorry, but my joke might have been a bit overboard. I apologize.
No. Please. Okay, it's always fun to make fun of Pol Pot. He's rotting now. But yeah. Let's see what else. Not Sergey sent $5. Thank you very much. He said, question for both. Favorite Call Me song? Why is it Arbeite von Wien? It is not Arbeite von Wien, no. For me, it's a cop-out to say the Soviet anthem. There's a lot of them. There is a very funky song that was a song about Soviet and Cuban, what's it called? Like relations. And the... oh my god, what was its name? Hold on, I'll bring it out. Soviet Cuban song. So then you guys will know. Yeah, Это говори me. That's what it is. That translates to that's us speaking. It's a very, very good song, very funky. I highly recommend. But it's not my favorite. I can't say one favorite because I have so many depending on my moods. Related to you, actually, there's a Red Army song that's called was it Under the Balkan Stars? And they're basically talking about how beautiful the Balkans are, but then they say like, oh, they're home, and wherever they come from in Russia or Ukraine or whatever, it's like where they truly feel beauty and whatnot. Balkan, I'll come up. Under the Balkan Stars, yeah, exactly. Beautiful song, absolutely beautiful.
It is.
Yeah. And somebody wrote Heimliche Aufmarsch is also very good. What's that one? The Arbeite Balkan. No. Yeah, that song.
No. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, all these other ones. Oh, and oh my God, what's it called? Is it called Bana? Hold on. Sorry.
Bandera Rossa.
Yeah, Bandera Rossa, of course.
I love it. That's arguably most of my videos finish it with it. It's absolutely beautiful.
Marx, Lenin, hold on. Das Banner von Marx und Lenin. It's so good. I highly recommend. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I can't. There's gonna be too much. I'll be here all day. So
I agree with most of your choices. One like very niche, even though it has like 1 million views, but the Katyusha, but Japanese.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, so with their instruments, wow. I don't know what they're called, the little tiny guitar thingies.
Yeah.
Jesus, those people can make music.
Yeah. That, and now you remind me also, there's an Arabic version of Pulsho Pole, but I could not find it. I remember I found it once, I listened to it, I wanted to download it, I looked again for it, I couldn't find it. But there's an Arabic rendition of it. That's also very good. But yeah, that's right. Hold on. Jamie Rowe was like, night, Hakim, night, Yugopnik, good night.
Good night.
We're almost done as well. Don't worry. Let's just knock out a few more of these, and then Artyom Medetov, excuse me, donated $10, and thank you very much. He asked, been watching YouTube for a while, but I would like to ask, what are your thoughts on the aggression of Ukraine after the dissolution? Cheers. It's exactly what you may expect. All the people, all the criminals, and the oligarchs, and the state, the mafias that basically rob the state and the wealth of the people. These people came to power, and they don't want the communists back in because they know they're going to lose their heads if the communists come back in. So then they stick into the education system every anti-communist thing to ever exist. They remove all the statues, they rename everything, they on and on and on. And to this day, they're trying to demonize the Soviet period and socialism as much as you can, to the point that even if you listen to the Soviet anthem, I think you can be imprisoned, I believe. So it's ridiculous, but the regression is completely expected. If you look at the Constitution of the Czech Republic, for example, you see that they have a clause, not in the Constitution, excuse me, in their legal code, they have a clause which is like, against discrimination, and they list race, fair enough. They list religion, fair enough. Gender, fair enough, and then they list class and quote unquote class hatred or class discrimination. Is like tied to things like racism and whatnot. So basically, if you were to say something against an African person or whatever, that's taken in the same way as if you were to say like, like socialist rhetoric is viewed in the same way from a legal perspective. It's very sly how they've done it, but it's all across Eastern Europe in these anti-communist regimes. So. Yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is it's completely unsurprising, and this is just how the die has rolled. Yeah. And I feel bad for the communists in these countries because they have to. Their work is so much harder. But sorry, so you wanted to say something?
No. I just said exactly.
Yeah. So that's it. Maybe let's see what the next question is, just so we can not be bogged down too much. Andreas Christensen. He sent 50 Norwegian crowns. Thank you very much. And he said, what's your, like both of our, thoughts on supporting worker-owned co-ops in order to make people more socialist-oriented, not as a solution, but steps towards socialism? I support it, but I think a lot of the time the discussion gets bogged down in only worker cooperatives, and that never goes higher into political action and associated organizations and whatnot. So that's my entire idea about it. They're good, but usually it's not coupled with an appropriate political program. What do you think?
Same.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Carlos Zaragoza sent another $1. Thank you very much. JB sent €2. He said, why education of masses failed so hard in the USSR? I don't know what you're trying to ask there. If you're asking about direct education was actually of very high quality. But if you mean like, political education, you need to realize that the dissolution of the Soviet Union was illegally carried out by a very small clique at the top, who were opposed not only by the internal political apparatus, but by the people as well. That's why there were two different coup attempts. There was a coup attempt in August of 1991, and there was a coup attempt in 1993. And there were associated protests that continued all the way from the late 80s into, even the modern day, actually, regarding this, like the fact that this happened. And we see to this day, year after year, the what's it called, calls or regret over the dissolution of the Soviet Union continue to exist. And for the people who try to spin this as, it's only nostalgia, the thing is that year by year, especially over the past 10 years, more people have wanted the Soviet Union to come back. Like, it's usually hovered around 45-50%. Like last year, I think it was 66%, something ridiculous like that with the last polling done. And more people who've experienced the Soviet Union have died off, actually. So it's less nostalgia and more active recollection or maybe understanding of the history. But of course, nostalgia plays a part. But yeah, that's why I think we're going to see a very interesting next couple of decades in Russia, because the old guard that have ossified and kind of allied with United Russia and whatnot within Russia, for example, are starting to die off, and more energetic young communists are within, for example, the Russian Communist Party. There's also the Party of Communists of Russia, which is a new party that's almost entirely just a young cadre who are doing good work there. I really hope, and it's my sincere belief that I think there will be some sort of active socialist organization that can be developed and will yield fruit over the next couple of decades within Russia. And I hope those hopes do come to pass. But I personally disagree with unless I misunderstood your question. Do you have anything to add, Yugopnik?
I would argue that ideological education in the Soviet Union, but wider also in China and in Yugoslavia, especially in the past, was on an impeccable level. I have, just from conversing multiple times with my grandpa, have been taught so many things, which obviously me as a stupid kid was disregarding, because that was a old stupid man who doesn't understand anything about the new modern world. Damn, I was a stupid fucking brat, but who just as a everyday man understood so much, both about the world and about the way material society is formed and organized, that I would argue today's political science university graduates wouldn't be able to, piss under his tree, as we like to say in my part of the world.
Yeah, no, exactly right. But no, I completely agree. Let's see. Roach Dog GR, who sent $5. Thank you very much. He said, how much should modern Orthodox Marxists defend the former Soviet Union or China? What's the line between educating versus ending siding with the state? You should do it only to the extent of explaining your and expounding on your arguments. But for personal development and education, you should thoroughly study the examples of the Soviet Union, of China, Yugoslavia, Cuba. One of the greatest failings of the modern left, particularly the modern Western left, is that they absolutely refuse to learn about the examples of these countries. There is so much to learn, both positive and negative, things that we should do more of and things we should never do again. And all this starts with a bit of research, but they refuse to because they associate some negative, like presupposition about these countries. So how much should you care? Quite a bit for your personal education, and when discussing with others, still quite a bit, but only to the extent of bringing a new and fresh analysis of capitalism directly related to people's material conditions, to their living standards, to their experiences, so that they can start to criticize capitalism as they see it and as they live it, rather than to purely view arguments about whether socialism in one country was a good idea in 1932 instead of being followed in the 40s, or other stupid conversations that are kind of superfluous.
I love when you get kind of angry. It's so cute.
Habibi, you're cute.
But yeah. I agree completely with absolutely everything you said, especially when interacting with, comrades from the West. They understand where they're coming from very often when they want to disregard absolutely all of the previously attempted experiments at socialism, because, again, they have been so brainwashed. Okay, I hate using that word. They have been pushed towards believing that nothing from those previous experiments can be accepted as legitimate and just essentially humanistically good. So that's where they're coming from. So I kind of try to understand the fear and to understand the disregard which they want to show towards, just a few million people that have quite literally given their life to attempt that before. But no, you're smarter than them. But at the same time, everything that Hakim said, after you pass that point of accept. What word should I use? After you get past the point of stigmatizing yourself from actually wanting to know more about these countries, you will be introduced to a massive amount of knowledge that you can gather for yourself and your comrades, which you would never be able to just reading theory, because you asked from a perspective of an Orthodox Marxist, just theory for theory's sake, but also analysis of applied theory. It will change your understanding of Marxism is a scientific and not utopian model, meaning change your perspective of how complicated shit on the ground actually is and how difficult certain things are to execute. And exactly by understanding the previous, as Hakim said, successes and failures of executing it, can you learn new strategies and approaches for executing it in the future. So quite literally, you are learning how to ride a bike. You fall 5 times and you wanna, but you also make 60 kilometers per hour 5 times, and when you get on the bike the 11th time, I should disregard both the 5 super good times and the 5 super bad times, and I'm gonna become a great bike rider. No, it's exactly by learning from the 5 falls and the 5 successes that on your 11th try, on your 17th try, on your 77th try, you're gonna actually make it fucking work. And fucking, I don't know what fucking competition bike riders go on, but yeah, go fuck yourself. Yes. Are you there? Can't hear you. Hakim. We might have lost Hakim for a second, or maybe I just can't hear him. Or we might have lost me. Can you hear me? Can you hear Hakim?
Hey, I'm back.
Okay, you're back. There you go, my love. Yes. And now there's interruptions again. Hello, can you hear me? You're muted. You muted yourself. I can see it on the Zoom.
Yeah.
There you go. Now you're good. Oh, it happens, my friend.
Okay. Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
Are we still live?
Yes, and I can hear you, yeah.
Okay. Do people, can you guys hear me when I speak?
Yes, everybody's screaming that you're fighting the CIA. Can you hear him now?
Yeah.
He stabbed that little CIA bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
With his big, thick, hard knife.
Fuck.
Yes, they can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, I'm so sorry about that, guys. I don't know what the fuck happened. I think my internet dropped for a second. It's okay, it happens.
It happens.
Yeah. There's a couple other super chats, but I can't see them anymore.
I'll scroll up. Wait. So the last one was by the lovely individual who asked us about Soviet Union, Orthodox Marxism. Then we have Loredana Groza giving us 10 rons. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Then Nat Sergey telling us that the best Soviet anthem is 1944 version. Fiscia il vento, or Italian Katyusha, is an awesome song. Thanks for making my mandatory weekend overtime bearable.
I'm so glad, Habibi.
Very welcome, Ivan, because you're not Sergey. Thank you so much. Matthew Muntz, thoughts on Ethiopian socialism, also known as the Derg. I go off on this, King.
All right. Yeah, it is a very complicated case. You need to remember that when it comes to the African socialisms, they're always a bit complicated because they try to facilitate. They try to play both sides. They never really, they would try to play on the American side and the Soviet side to try to get their own aim. But what ended up happening is they always fermented different groups, usually within the military, that ended up supporting different factions, and then that would always devolve into either civil war or coups that would end up being followed. A lot of the times they didn't have appropriate centralized government structures as a result of them being newly independent countries, and of course the former colonialists never built up appropriate civil institutions and administrative institutions to run a modern nation state. So they were also a victim of their circumstances. When it comes to Derg specifically, early period, they were pretty good, particularly with their literacy programs. Late period, going to war in the region, especially with if I remember correctly, they went to war with Somalia, which was also socialist at the time, if I remember correctly. But I would need to check my history on that. That was a bit of that was a bit yikes. But generally, it was not a good example because of the track they followed. By that I mean they didn't try to develop some sort of indigenous socialism based on the local conditions. What they tried to do was something similar to, for example, what South Yemen did, which is a mechanical placement of Soviet economic principles or Eastern European economic models right onto highly agrarian, feudal, non-industrialized conditions. These are things that, for example, the Chinese learned right away not to do that, but a lot of the African socialism did not. And as a result, they always ended up with lopsided issues. Either they would have hyperinflated currencies, or they would have currencies that were way too strong with too small of a supply, and a heavy emphasis on, ironically, heavy industry without the appropriate civilian infrastructure to make use of that heavy industry. It gets very complicated, but the Derg is one nice example of the general symptoms of failed African socialism. So you should study them, but the relevance, or at least modern day relevance, is limited, I think, because the conditions they existed in don't really exist anymore. But yeah, I think that's that's a very bullet pointed, summarized view of it.
You ever thought of becoming like a professor? I could be like your assistant professor, and there would be scandals in the university because we're in a relationship. It would be quite nice.
I mean, yeah, of course. Yes, we'll keep them guessing. We lock the door whenever we enter. We go into the office. I'm like, oh, we're just working.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any questions left from
I really apologize if there are, but I do not see them because I'm only looking at the chat, right? And at the live chat, I don't have access to your YouTube analytics thing. But I believe
mine
that's
too,
it.
I can't see it. Yeah. All right, that's perfectly fine. Well, I think we can start winding it down. I'm really glad that everybody came around. We had a really good time. We're very sorry for the technical difficulties that we faced, and we'll do more of these, and hopefully next time we'll figure out what the fuck went wrong this time. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining us and having fun with us. I always love talking with Yugopnik. Usually it's in the DMs, because of course those have to remain private. You guys can't see those. But it's also nice to do this sort of public discussions. We'll definitely be doing a lot more. And if you had questions and we didn't get to them, we're sorry. But of course, there's only so many hours in the day. Do you have anything to add, Habibi?
Exactly. No, nothing. This was an absolute pleasure. It was extremely fun. Also, from my side, apologies for the delay, but it was out of our hands. And yes, this was absolutely awesome. We should definitely do it again. I really, really enjoyed this.
Mm-hmm. All right, perfect. Well, then we'll see you guys in a future, hopefully very soon, and problem-free stream. All right, take care.
Inshallah.
Guys.
Bye.
Inshallah.